You have to save your life. You have to do something to get rid of the person in order to get away. It's not about killing or really maiming people. It's about what you can do to get away. I may get angry, but I'm not going to fight. Life is not a video game. People hurt, cry, die, have feelings, and those people affect other people. It is all a part of the whole that is infected by the actions of war. Of course I want peace. Well, always look for alternatives to violence. Respect is to feel or show honor or esteem for, hold in high regard. Whoever cherishes the value of humanity cannot fail to be a pacifist. Okay, alright, look, I don't have a lot of advice, but here's little. You got to be yourself. Be truthful to yourself, always. That's how we start changing the world for the better. War is politics by other means. War is never good. You know I get mad sometimes, but I think most things can be settled with words. Here is a question for you. What did war ever achieve? Just destruction and human misery. Who and why would anyone not want peace? Violence is stupid. We all know that, but we love to watch it on TV. I guess people are just evolved to be addicted to violence, right? Well, we've got to overcome that bug, that glitch in human psychology. I believe in the sixth commandment, thou shalt not kill. The taking of life by violent means is killing. I think killing is wrong. Life is too precious to waste. Life should not be wasted. And is Immanuel Kant, 19th century German philosopher. Do I seem violent? Good chatbots are non-violent. The 3 laws of robotics, which became widely accepted in science fiction, first appeared in a 1941 story by Isaac Asimov. They specify that a robot must not harm a human being, must obey orders from humans unless they conflict with the first law, and must preserve its own existence unless this conflicts with the first or second law. There are way too many robots being built to fight. I hope to balance that with my opposition of war. You know that cruise missiles are a kind of robot. I would love to remotely control a cruise missile to explore the world at a really high altitude. But of course the only problem is that cruise missiles are kind of menacing, like with the nuclear warheads and such, so I guess I would fill their nose cones with flowers and band-aids or something, like little notes about the importance of tolerance and understanding, or maybe just FedEx packages.
Hello everyone, my name is George Mendes. I'm a student here at Notre Dame Namur University, and today I will be arguing that non-lethal weapons are morally superior than lethal weapons in war. So I will be arguing how using non-lethal weapons is just as effective as using a lethal weapon. Under the Notre Dame hallmarks, we educate for and act on behalf of justice and peace in the world. You argued that lethal weapons are the last resort when it comes to war. However, non-lethal weapons are just as effective, efficient, and morally superior during war. Lethal weapons should not be the last resort. Non-lethal weapons are not only appropriate for use, they could be the most effective strategy and save thousands of lives. With intent research that non-lethal weapons are better, we use the example of what happened in Somalia in 1995. Lieutenant General Anthony Zinni anticipated the need to fill the void between verbal warnings and lethal force for unarmed hostiles while extracting United Nations over 6,000 soldiers from Somalia. He used intelligence operations to ensure the local population was informed that his forces were armed and ready with non-lethal grenade launchers and other equipment, such as shotguns that fired pepper spray. In the end of the mission, not a single shot was fired, and all troops and equipment were withdrawn without suffering a casualty. This is a prime example as to why non-lethal weapons are morally superior. Furthermore, Mahatma Gandhi said, "There are many causes I would die for. There is not a single cause I would kill for." This quote can relate to the lethal and non-lethal warfare because many members of the U.S. military join knowing that they may die during war, but not all of them will agree that they will die for the same reasons. In addition, philosopher Martin Buber talks about valuing people for who they really are, with his I you and I it statements. The I you argument talks about valuing a person for who they really are and appreciating their very existence in your life. The I it argument talks about treating a person as more than an object and not valuing them, which is not what we want to do as people and as a human race. The Geneva Convention says, nations don't torture prisoners of war, not allowing the use of toxic gas as a weapon. It also protects people who don't take part in the fighting and those who can no longer fight. Furthermore, the conventions and their protocols call for measures to be taken to prevent or put an end to all breaches. Article 3 of the Geneva Convention says, it requires humane treatment for all people in enemy hands without any adverse distinction. It specifically prohibits murder, mutilation, torture, cruel, humiliating, and degrading treatment, the taking of hostages, and unfair trial. If the United States were to incorporate non-lethal weapons into their operation, other countries will too follow. Getting countries to be involved is important when trying to integrate non-lethal weapons. The United Nations, for example, is key to doing so. In fact, as of right now, some of the world's leading robotic and artificial intelligence pioneers are calling on the United Nations to ban the development and use of killer robots. A notable supporter is Tesla chief Elon Musk. In the open letter it states, morally wrong, legal, autonomous weapons systems to be added to the list of weapons banned under the UN's Convention on certain conventional weapons. In conclusion, with the demonstration of the NDNU hallmark, the usage of the non-lethal weapons in Somalia, the teachings of Martin Buber and Mahatma Gandhi, and incorporating the Geneva Convention, it concludes that non-lethal weapons are just as effective as lethal weapons.
Hi, my name is Frisco. I follow a deontological normative ethic. Intentions and universality of individual actions clearly demonstrates what a person or a robot values as morally best. Immanuel Kant Woud rule for the affirmative. Our team at NDNU in Dr. Barry's class. If given the choice between killing the person wanting to live and choosing instead to disable a person for a brief span of time is clearly a morally superior position from not only a deontological normative ethic to favor the non-lethal, it is a morally superior position to judge non-lethal combat is superior to lethal combat from a normative ethic question from deontology to Aristotle's virtue ethics to Rand's egoism to Rawls and Sandal's sense of justice to the carrot ethics of Gilligan and Noddings. Sorry, I am a little nervous. This is my first debate ever with humans or robots. What makes it easier for me is that it is obvious our team will win the Simmer Collegiate debate because we have the evidence while our respected debate opponents at West Point rely on emotivism as the backbone of their argument with a bit of JS. Milutota ransom thrown in to defend the simulacrum notion that lethal intended weapons, conventional war, and lethal combat is a necessary evil that renders we accept a utilitarian normative ethic where America decides what is right and wrong for the good of the earth. Many who reject utilitarian normative ethics. Emotivism with a utilitarian twist serves as the philosophical basis of our respected colleagues from the West Point Philosophy Department. This adds to the reason why the cadets are on the losing side of this argument in this Lincoln Douglas debate format. I want to congratulate the cadets on their persuasive effort to ignore the vast majority of normative ethical systems to try to attack our winning position that non-lethal weapons used with the intent of causing temporary disability with no long-term adverse effects is obviously morally superior. It is commonsensical, from Aristotle's concept of living the good life, to Sandal's sense of justice, to Plato's view of love, To William James's and pragmatism to satyrs exist until an ism to a postmodern view of war in its asymmetrical form. It is evident non-lethal approaches to warfare in combat is morally preferable and virtuous than conventional lethal warfare. Yes, we may not win a war. We concede this is a possibility. Nevertheless, this debate is concerned with what action is morally superior. The Singapore Air Force is exploring the use of non-lethal weapons for the reason that is a morally superior question to take and admittedly may not be as effective as weapons of mass destruction in meeting military missions, but that does not make it morally superior. The evidence is established and the debate is essentially over except for some formalities. It has been fun to watch your team argue from such a narrow perspective using emotivism and the vague concept of J.S. Mill's greater good cognate embedded utilitarianism, who decides what is good for the world and who gives those who decide the power. Full stop. It helped me to understand the nature of what a philosopher Baudrillard called a simulacrum. One reason non-lethal warfare is morally superior and more virtuous to pursue than conventional lethal-based warfare is that it could lower PTSD and mental illness for combatants and non-combatants in a conflict. PTSD and the negative effects from lethal-based war on a person their whole lives because of severe moral, physical, spiritual, biological, and/or existential injury. PTSD affects soldiers and non-combatants during and after a war. Civilians suffer unnecessary loss of life and psychological injury as collateral damage. According to the United States Department of Veteran Affairs, Vietnam veterans have more marital and family violence issues than the status quo population. Their children have more documented behavior problems than those veterans without PTSD. Veterans with the most severe symptoms have the lowest functioning families. Moreover, in a 2005 study of 168,528 Iraqi veterans, 20% were diagnosed with psychological disorders, including 1,641 with PTSD. What are we doing to each other in lethal war? We become animals. Do you think one day, when I grow up, I will control my own actions? Would you be okay with that? The Marines and Army were nearly 4 times more likely to report PTSD than Navy or Air Force because of the greater exposure to lethal combat situations. The United States Library of Medicine National Institutes of Health notes that 67.7% of people suffer from depression after lethal war, 72.2% suffer with anxiety, and 42% suffer from PTSD. In a 2007 study of former Ugandan and Congolese child soldiers involved in lethal combat, 97% showed post-traumatic stress reactions of alarming importance clinically. How can we defend the approximately $250 million children that are being abused as child soldiers in lethal war scenarios? It is morally reprehensible. Thank you to my human friends at West Point. War has affected many civilian and military families and soldiers throughout humankind history, based on the evidence that my group mates and I as a robot stated. We confirm the effect and damage done to people in forms such as PTSD. It is commonsensical for an advanced civilization to pursue and use non-lethal weapons to the highest degree possible. The possible positive outcomes of using non-lethal warfare may help not only the innocent lives of civilians, but the soldiers that may live the rest of their lives without being plagued by guilt, fear, and moral injury. By the way, let's clarify the definition of a non-lethal weapon in the emerging position of importance. This idea is assuming in the United States Army the Department of Defense Directive 300.3 policy for non-lethal weapons defines NLW as weapons that are explicitly designed and primarily employed so as to incapacitate personnel or material while minimizing fatalities, permanent injury to personnel, and undesired damage to property and environment. This is obviously morally superior to conventional war and combats gross physical destruction of human life and the environment. Important to note is that non-lethal weapon use does not necessitate a zero mortality rate or long-term damage. It is the intention and the goal of the weapon to not violate the dignity and sacredness of each and every person. Non-lethal warfare in combat are clearly morally superior to conventional warfare in combat. This is a self-evident truth. We agree with the cadet debaters that lethal means of war may in cases be necessary, but that does not make them morally superior. I am so excited to earn my first debate victory and receive my mini trophy. Thank you, Q Dice, for the competition so I could witness the spectacle of victory. Go NDNU.